Intense moments inside of a courtroom in Maine as a brawl breaks out during a murder sentencing. This happened Friday, just moments after Jason Serval was sentenced to 45 years in prison.
A young innocent girl I can never bring back. I think about this every day.
His partying hard didn't cause his own, it caused the of 5 children.
A former prosecutor, once listed among People magazine's most eligible bachelors, is now on his way to prison.
And the court imposes a sentence of 5 to 10 years.
Former Boston prosecutor Gary Zerola was sentenced to up to 10 years in prison. Now in his 50s, Zerola was found guilty of assaulting a 21-year-old woman over 3 years ago. Prosecutors mentioned that it was too difficult for her to appear in court, but she did testify during the trial and sent a letter to the judge before sentencing.
Since he committed this crime, I've experienced an extreme sense of paranoia. Every time I'm in my apartment, my door is deadbolted and I live in constant fear that someone will enter without my permission and hurt me again.
Zerola allegedly assaulted the 21-year-old woman after a night of drinking. According to prosecutors, after initially helping her, he returned hours later and assaulted her while she was asleep. Zerola has a history of rape accusations dating back to 1996, though he had been acquitted of all previous charges. The judge emphasized that the sentencing was solely based on this one charge. The 5 to 10-year sentence exceeded the defense's recommendation, but was still well below the state maximum of 20 years.
I found it consistent with the guidelines. Whether or not it's fair is for someone else to decide. 2 to 3 is what I thought was fair.
I want to commend the survivor in this case for her courage and resilience, for her willingness to come forward.
We're relieved and we're gratified that the jury validated what happened to the survivor in this case.
Meanwhile, inside the packed courtroom, members of the community who claimed to know his other alleged victims were present. They expressed that, in their view, justice was served.
We're very happy with the outcome of today's sentencing.
He should have gotten the max, which was 20, but it is his first conviction, so we understand that. But we do feel like the judge was fair today.
Zerola's defense team has announced their intention to appeal the decision. There were intense moments in a Maine courtroom when a brawl broke out during a murder sentencing. Jason Serval had just been sentenced to 45 years in prison for the murder of Alice Abbott 2 years ago. Moments later, Abbott's brother jumped over the barrier, attempting to attack Serval. A corrections officer intervened, using a stun gun to stop him. Abbott's family had been hoping for a life sentence for Serval.
Intense moments inside of a courtroom in Maine as a brawl breaks out during a murder sentencing. This happened Friday, just moments after Jason Serval was sentenced to 45 years in prison for murdering Alice Abbott 2 years ago. Abbott's brother jumped over the barrier in an attempt to attack Serval. He was stopped by a corrections officer who used a stun gun. Abbott's family had asked for a life sentence.
The man who killed 2 sisters in Dorchester and then fled the country will now spend the rest of his life in prison. A judge handed down the life sentence to the former fugitive, who was once on the most wanted list. Members of the O'Neill family, present in court, shared that they have been living in fear for nearly 8 years since the events of 2011. Prosecutors noted that it's hard to imagine such circumstances occurring today.
The court imposes a term of life imprisonment, that term to be served from and after the sentencing in count 2 to recognize the deaths of 2 separate and distinct individuals.
The judge imposed consecutive life sentences for John Yevon Janvier, who was found guilty yesterday of killing sisters Stephanie and Judith Emile. According to prosecutors, the sisters were executed in their Harlem Street apartment in Dorchester back in 2011. Janvier was on the U.S. Marshals 15 Most Wanted list before being captured in Haiti. He was convicted of 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of second-degree murder. Before learning his fate, he listened to statements from family members.
You take 7 and 8 years of my life. I have 2 beautiful children. I always afraid to take them out.
It's still gonna take time to process everything. We're happy with the verdict.
Janvier also chose to speak, maintaining his innocence and insisting that he had nothing to do with the events. DJ DJ Hernandez's mother, his soon-to-be ex-wife, and his soon-to-be ex-girlfriend warned the police that Hernandez could be a threat to society.
Her concerns were many, mostly that she wanted.
Terry Hernandez informed the police that her son, Dennis DJ Hernandez, had threatened her in the past.
Ms. Hernandez expressed that Mr. Hernandez's mental health diagnoses were that of bipolar and schizophrenia, and that in the past he had threatened the victim.
Bristol police were already investigating reports that Hernandez was allegedly planning school shootings at multiple universities where he once coached. However, after a Florida divorce attorney for his estranged wife flagged a threatening social media post, police moved in on the former quarterback.
A threat to kill her, and I believe open court down in Florida. He was posting photographs of them, their faces, with targets on their head, and threatening to kill.
Officer Zachary Levi testified before Judge Tammy Gathers, who then granted a protective order for Hernandez's wife.
Get on the ground. Get down on the ground. Get on the ground.
Body camera footage reveals the moments when officers moved in on Hernandez.
That he was armed and that he would kill us if we tried to approach him.
While under a psychiatric hold at the hospital for Central Connecticut, Hernandez allegedly continued to make threats.
That he intended to kill his wife upon his release.
A public defender assigned to Hernandez is questioning the credibility of the witnesses.
Her ability to tell the truth, anything about her history?
No.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Hernandez was transported and remains in custody. He is also facing separate federal charges related to these matters. A mourning mother and a grieving father.
I'm the father, and I'm supposed to protect all my family members and things like that. And that day, I feel short.
The two were in court, addressing the man who pleaded guilty to killing their daughter, Olivia Schultz, in her own backyard back in October 2022.
You were in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's what I feel, because we were supposed to be there.
Investigators say the family was unloading groceries when they noticed two masked teens in the alley, one of whom was Benjamin Garrett. Prosecutors stated that although both teens initially walked away from the family, they then turned around and opened fire.
This is what it's come down to. You can't look at anybody, or you may get shot.
The gunfire injured the mother and killed Olivia. Garrett apologized during his sentencing.
Caused the death of an innocent human being, an innocent young girl. A young innocent girl I can never bring back. I think about this every day. Not that it's something that I'll ever be able to forget.
The judge sentenced Garrett to 22 years of confinement. Afterward, Olivia's mother called it somewhat justice.
A little bit of just a little bit, because no matter what happens in there, I still got to go home and know she's not there.
The second teenager, Cornell Horner, faces the same charges as Garrett. A man convicted of killing his wife and shooting one of his children was sentenced for murder. Ronald Burdett read a letter to his children and the family of the woman he killed. Burdett pleaded guilty to shooting his wife Cindy before turning the gun on his twins. His daughter was injured, but his son was able to call 911.
I wish I still had my mom to go back to for help, because there's things that I still have questions for her that I don't know really who to turn to sometimes for things like that.
The judge sentenced Burdett to 25 years in prison. He is not eligible for parole until he has served at least 20 years. The former Louisville police detective accused of lying on the witness stand and tampering with evidence in murder trials that sent innocent men to prison is going to jail. Former Louisville police officer Mark Handy, accused of framing innocent men for murder, will spend 1 year behind bars.
The charges are perjury in the first and tampering with physical evidence. How do you plead?
Guilty. Handy helped send at least 4 innocent men to prison, including Edwin Chandler. He did not address his victims, several of whom were seated in the courtroom, watching as he was led away to serve his sentence in prison.
I think this gives Mr. Chandler some closure, it gives Mark some closure, and we can all move on.
While Chandler, who was convicted of murder in 1995 and exonerated in 2009 after serving 10 years in prison, agreed to the terms of the plea agreement, he stated that Handy's sentence pales in comparison to the suffering he and the other victims endured.
The magnitude and the weight of this is immeasurable. We'll never be able to get back what we've lost in this.
It was a combination of 62 years that were served by these men, and he only got 1.
Chandler told the court he was disappointed it had taken the criminal justice system this long to act on Handy. He noted that Commonwealth's attorney Tom Wine decided not to pursue a case against Handy in 2016, and the U.S. Attorney's Office also dropped the case in 2017. It wasn't until 2018 that Attorney General Andy Beshear appointed Shane Young as a special prosecutor, more than 2 decades after Chandler was first convicted.
They protected a white officer, and for what? My life don't matter? Evidently it don't, because it's taken 30 years.
Handy had accepted a plea deal to avoid jail time, but the judge rejected that agreement.
I can't say that it feels good or that it feels bad. There's no winners in this. There are no winners in this at all.
Chandler calls on the Department of Justice to investigate civil rights violations within the criminal justice system. The judge discussed repeat offender Rebecca Johnson, who is heading to prison for the very first time. After violating probation, Johnson was brought back into court to answer the accusations. She first made headlines due to a DUI crash in July 2006. It happened in far eastern Jefferson County. Johnson crashed into the railroad crossing gate at LaGrange Road and Chamberlain Lane near the Gene Snyder Freeway exits. She was drunk and speeding at the time. The impact of the crash cut the car in half, and her 2 passengers, Justin Cantrell and Ben McIntosh, both died at the scene. Facing new accusations, her attorney argued that she needs support that prison cannot offer. The judge disagreed and sentenced her to 5 years. Rebecca Johnson has been in and out of Jefferson County courtrooms for the last 15 years, convicted of a deadly DUI and on drug trafficking charges, but she has never been sentenced to prison.
I'm going to revoke your probation, Ms. Johnson.
In front of the family that had waited 15 years for justice, a judge sent Rebecca Johnson to prison for the first time. Johnson was in court for a probation revocation hearing. According to court documents, she walked away from required substance abuse treatment and used someone else's urine for a drug test. In court, she admitted those accusations were true. Her attorney requested home incarceration so she could continue outpatient treatment, which he claimed was finally the right fit for her traumatic brain injury. However, the prosecutor argued that she had more than a decade to find a solution to stay out of trouble, and nothing had worked. The judge agreed, calling her a danger to the public and stating that incarceration was the only appropriate supervision. These were the words the family had waited so long to hear, finally finding justice for the death of Justin, who was killed in Johnson's DUI crash 15 years ago.
We weren't going to give up. If this went on for another 15 years, we would have been here at every single hearing. We were going to fight for Justin, and we were going to fight for justice.
Johnson was taken into custody at the end of the hearing, where she will be booked into Metro Corrections before being moved to prison. Rebecca Johnson is also scheduled for another probation revocation hearing in Oldham County. If her probation is revoked there, she could face another 5 years in prison. 2 Louisville teens charged in a fatal school bus stop shooting in 2021 were in court. Before the pretrial hearing for Demorian Moore and Mecky Cable, a judge addressed an alleged fight between the 2 suspects.
All right. We are on the record in 22 CR 1266, trailer 1 and 2, that is Commonwealth of Kentucky versus Mecky Cable and Commonwealth of Kentucky versus Demorian Moore. Counsel, can I get appearances for the record?
Ryan Conroy on behalf of the Commonwealth.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Michael Fracci on behalf of Mr. Moore. He's seated next to me.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Lana Fazio from Mecky Cable, seated to my left.
All right, before we get started, we'll talk about a preliminary matter. If I ever get a phone call while I'm on lunch that you two are fighting and acting a fool, you will not be happy. I don't know how you all ended up in the same place or the same area, but that is 100,000% disrespectful, and it will not be tolerated. I'm not your mama. Don't play with me. You all are in here with charges of and you acting a damn fool fighting in the back. You know what a fight is? That's an assault charge. You want another assault charge? Add it on to this? Do you? To say I'm disappointed is beyond ridiculous. It makes no sense. You have on an orange jumpsuit. You have handcuffs on, and you in the back acting like damn animals. What's the problem? You don't have to like each other. You don't have to get along. You can have whatever defense that you want, and you can have whatever defense that you want. Y'all in court. Y'all are not here to be friends. I don't care what your defense is. You can say he did it. You can say they did it. You can say I did it. I don't care. But what you won't do is be violent. What you won't do is impact somebody's safety downstairs. What you won't do is have me talk to you like this ever again. Do I make myself clear? If I heard that you as much as made a threat, I will hold you in criminal contempt. And I am sick and tired of every time I get on this bench, I have to say something to somebody. Act like you got some damn sense. Do I make myself clear?
Say, yes, ma'am, you're my behind.
He said yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
You say it loud and clear to where she can hear you.
It don't make no sense. Do I need to just have y'all up here? Because I can separate you all day long. You will not hurt him. You will not hurt him. Don't say nothing. Don't defend yourself. Don't say nothing. I don't care how it got started. I don't care if you were defending yourself. I don't care if y'all threw a blow. I don't care. But when I get a call to ask me if I even want to call your case, it's as simple. Look at all these people in here. The media's here. It's 1,000 people in here about your futures. About lives that have been lost. And because y'all want to act like babies, it prolongs stuff. Do you think that I'm going to give somebody HIP, I'm going to give somebody probation, or I'm even going to think about an alternative sentencing plan or anything like that when it comes to the Department of Justice, juvenile justice? I make those recommendations. I talk to those people. I work with them. I get to decide what your future is. Me. And if y'all back there fighting, you think I'm going to trust you to do anything that I ask you to do? Do you think if you ask me for probation because it's allowed under the code for you to request it, that I'm going to be inclined to do so, and you back there fighting, allegedly? Shake your head no. Okay. I'm not playing. I'm nice until I'm not. I'm not playing with y'all. You walk the straight and narrow. You do what you're supposed to do. You're an 18-year-old child. There are monsters in prison that would hurt you without thinking twice about it. You are not hard. Ain't nobody scared of you but you. Don't let them tell me I did nothing else.
Similar to the previous case that devastated families, this time, the accused ended the lives of 5 innocent souls. A night of reckless speeding in Fort Pierce claimed 5 lives on November 23, 2018. Today, Tanner Dashner enters the courtroom, forever altering his life. That night, the calm streets of Fort Pierce were suddenly overcome by chaos, rocking the entire city.
How much alcohol was involved in this young man's life? He had the hashtag party hard until I die.
Such a horrendous event unsurprisingly sends shockwaves through people's lives and sparks storms on social media.
It's one of the deadliest wrecks in Treasure Coast history. 19 days ago. As we indicated, Tanner Dashner caused this wreck. There's no question about who did it. This isn't a mystery to solve. Mr. Dashner was prolific with social media. We were provided with this photo, which we believe to be Tanner Dashner, taken before this wreck, where he dubbed himself Sloshed.
What's the time frame in between when that picture was taken and the crash?
Hours to minutes.
How do you know it was taken that night?
The sources that pulled the photo indicated that it was taken that night. Tanner Dashner's social media was immediately pulled down from social media. We're asking the public if they have other social media of Tanner Dashner to please provide it to us. We are obviously going to subpoena Snapchat, Facebook, and Twitter. But just to get an idea about how much alcohol was involved in this young man's life, he had the hashtag party hard until I die. Well, on November 23rd, his partying hard didn't cause his own death. It caused the death of 5 children. 19 days ago. I'll take questions after. We spoke to Corporal Suarez of the Florida Highway Patrol a couple of days ago. Corporal Suarez informed me that there were multiple reports on his desk indicating intoxication of Tanner Dashner from the hospital draw and from their own evidence. We have heard nothing from this state attorney's office about that. Assistant State Attorney White called right after Corporal Suarez, not knowing I had spoken to Corporal Suarez, and asked me for this information. He does not need this information. We are happy to provide and have provided all evidence that we have. But it has been 19 days, and Mr. Dashner is still free. He caused a wreck. He caused a wreck while intoxicated, and it is believed he did so while running a red light at an excessive rate of speed. Another witness posted to Facebook named Jeremy Morris. We hope you speak with Jeremy Morris. About a mile before he caused all of this, he almost ran my daughter and I off the road, and then 2 cars in front of us. He was swerving all over the lanes of the road and straddling the concrete raised median. We saw the kids in the car completely engulfed in flames. Imagine if this were your children. Wouldn't you want an arrest? It's been 19 days. There can be no more days. We need full information to be released by the Florida Highway Patrol. They said the intoxication results are on a desk. We need Mr. Assistant Attorney White, if in fact he wants to keep prosecuting this case, this 5 fatality case, to do so or step aside. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Cheney to tell you a little bit about her daughter. Ms. Baker, excuse me.
Hi, my name is Shamika. My daughter, Alexis Cheney, was a loving person. She loved to have fun. The community loved her. She shared herself with a lot of people all over the world. My child is gone. She cannot be replaced. My family is so torn apart. All I have is pictures and videos. I want justice to be served, not only for my daughter, but for the other families too. It hurts that I have to sit here and listen to my kids cry all day. The memories, the only thing I have is the memories of how she used to walk, what she used to wear. This is not fair. Justice has to be served.
Could you spell your name for us?
SHAMEKABAKER.
And you're Alexis' mom?
Yes.
How old are you, Ms. Baker?
I'm 38. And she has 5 other siblings that's torn apart.
Miss Baker had to use Christmas money to pay for funeral expenses. So did 4 other families. All they want right now is for justice to show that it is equal. As Dr. King said, justice delayed is justice denied. We chose the state attorney's office so they see and hear us. So they see your cameras and know there's interest here that justice be served and Tanner Dashner be arrested immediately.
Good morning, sir. You are Tanner Dashner?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dashner, you are charged with 5 counts of vehicular homicide and 5 counts of DUI manslaughter. The judge who signed the warrant in this case made a probable cause determination, so I'm not required to. I see that you signed the public defender request sheet indicating that you have a private attorney representing you on this case. Do I have a private attorney here for Mr. Dashner?
Yes, sir. I'm Gabrielle Radcliffe from Mr. Dashner.
Good morning, Ms. Radcliffe. Mr. Dashner, I'm going to indicate that I've advised you of your right to an attorney. Obviously, you brought an attorney with you. and therefore there's no need to appoint the public defender in your case. Counsel, anything on bond or conditions this morning?
No, Your Honor.
Anything from the state?
We're just asking that the bond remain the same as well as his pretrial conditions be announced.
Thank you. Mr. Dashner, the judge who signed the warrant set the bond in each count at $750,000, which brings your total bond as scheduled on the warrant at $7,500,000. He also ordered that you be placed on pretrial services with a GPS monitor and house arrest, exceptions for medical and legal only. You're also placed on a no drugs alcohol restriction, which means you're not to consume drugs or alcohol unless prescribed by a physician. You're not to go anywhere where drugs or alcohol are sold as a primary purpose, and you are subject to random testing. Do you understand all that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Next case.
And the second thing or the first thing I provided, Your Honor, was an article from WPBF Online. And in that article, they discussed, because of Mr. Phillips' incessant posting and press conferences, stating that the state attorney in this circuit was not doing their job by arresting Mr. Dashner immediately, or somehow inferring that my client was getting special treatment because of who his father is. The fire department in our area was receiving multiple threats, and the sheriff had to escort our fire department on multiple calls because of the credibility of the threats from this case, which I think is directly, again, attributable to Mr. Phillips posting on social media and discussions with social media. Further, in that same article, Your Honor, Mr. Phillips states, and I quote, "Tanner Dashner is still driving in Fort Pierce, and if he had been okay, if he had walked away from that, he would have been arrested immediately for DUI. So he has the privilege, because he had such a bad wreck and went to the hospital, he essentially got an extra 20 days, including today, to be able to drive, and that's horrifying." End quote. That's a statement that Mr. Phillips made. There can be no argument by Mr. Phillips or anyone that a reasonable lawyer would not know or reasonably should know that that statement that my client's driving after a quintuple DUI alleged manslaughter, that it has a substantial likelihood of materially prejudicing the proceeding before this court. He definitely knew. There's no way that a reasonable lawyer would not know that saying my client allegedly driving after this occurred is going to poison the jury panel. That's his intent. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to, I think, poison the panel in his favor for a potential civil suit. But what that is doing is poisoning our veneer for the criminal trial. And again, that abuts against our client's Sixth Amendment right. Mr. Phillips states that there is no precedent for this. Of course there is. And I think that the court just as recently as February 15th of this year, a federal court for the United States District Court of Columbia filed a gag order against Roger Stone's lawyers. 1, comments that are likely to influence the actual outcome of the trial, and 2, comments that are likely to prejudice the jury veneer, even if an untainted panel can ultimately be found. Few, if any, interests under the Constitution are more fundamental than the right to a fair trial by impartial jurors, and an outcome affected by extrajudicial statements would violate that fundamental right. Your Honor, in light of this, in light of the United States Supreme Court case law that supports this, I would ask the court, again, because of it is impeding on my client's Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial, I would specifically ask to gag John Phillips' extrajudicial statements that he should know or reasonably should know have the likelihood of impacting my client's right to a fair trial. I'd ask that that same order be placed upon the state attorney's office, upon Florida Highway Patrol, and on my office.
Okay, Mr. White.
Judge, there is no one from the state attorney's office that is going to pre-try this case in media, social media, or anywhere else. We plan on trying this case in the courtroom. Florida Highway Patrol, I believe, is same thing. They are not going to make these statements. So I don't think there's any issue there. I really think this is an issue between the defense and Mr. Phillips, and I would say that the state really had no dog in this fight. I will say this, though, because the motion does include all agents of the state attorney's office. In no way, shape, or form is Mr. Phillips an agent to the state attorney's office. So if he does something, I don't want it to come back to the state of Florida. We are doing our thing, keeping his own, but he is not an agent.
To the family of Anthony Victor, I am sorry. I'm sorry that you'll never be able to see your son again. I'm sorry that you'll never get to see him smile or hear him laugh ever again. To the family of Anthony Martin, I am sorry. I'm sorry that you will never get to see your son reach his full potential. I am sorry that he will never get to pursue the dreams that he had. To the family of Darian Douglas, I am sorry. I'm sorry that you'll never get to hear your son tell you about his day ever again. I'm sorry that you won't get to be there to comfort him when he's sad and celebrate when he succeeds. To the family of Keaton Tillett, I am sorry. I am sorry that you will never get to be able to tell your son, I love you, and hear him say it back. I am sorry that you will never get to hug him ever again. To the family of Alexis Cheney, I am sorry. I am sorry that you will never get to hear your daughter tell you about her hopes and dreams for the future. I'm sorry that you will never get to see the impact that she could have had in the world. To Ariana Stanberry, I am sorry. I am sorry for all the emotional and physical trauma that I have caused you. I am sorry for the friends that you lost in this accident. I hope that you will be able to heal from this and have a happy and successful life. I've never intended to hurt anyone in my life. I regret the poor decisions I've made and am sorry to all the families that I have devastated because of this terrible accident. I hope that you will receive some closure today and that one day that you can forgive me. Thank you.
Tanner Dashner was sentenced to over 70 years in prison. In Pinellas County on February 17, 2021, Deputy Michael Magli's world was shattered when the wheels of a drunk driver tore apart his uniform. Yet, amidst the wreckage, Robert Haltseffel discovers his destined path. The law enforcement department sympathized with the victim in this case, understanding the difficulty of sacrificing one's life in the line of duty.
That resulted in the death of a deputy sheriff. At about 4:25 this afternoon, a call came in to the communication center about a person who was at Forelock Road and Eastlake Road in a white pickup truck who was passed out, unresponsive. Eastlake Fire Rescue responded, and the vehicle was parked on Forelock, facing westbound, just east of the intersection of Eastlake. The fire department approached the vehicle, saw the person inside, and he was unresponsive, and the fire department made a decision to break the window to try and get inside to help the person who was unconscious. When the fire department broke the window, the person then fled and proceeded west on Forelock, north on Eastlake Road. At that point, two deputies were northbound on Eastlake Road, stopped where the fire department was, and the person took off northbound. They were not in pursuit. They didn't get anywhere near him. They didn't follow him. He had just taken off northbound. He got up to the intersection of Keystone and Eastlake Road, turned east. At that point, one of the sergeants was up on Keystone Road and saw the car. The sergeant got behind him just to try and do a traffic stop. As the vehicle approached the Woodfield subdivision, which is to the east of East Lake Road, south off of Keystone. And the vehicle slowed, made a south turn into the Woodfield subdivision, and then immediately jumped the median, made a U-turn going back northbound, and fled from the sergeant who was trying to do the traffic stop. The sergeant didn't pursue, saw the vehicle go back westbound on Keystone Road, and the sergeant was again westbound, and he got back to the intersection of Keystone and East Lake and saw the vehicle sitting in the turn lane to go south on East Lake Road. A deputy was at the intersection, came up to the car to try and pinch it off. Suspect went around the deputy and then took off at a high rate of speed southbound on East Lake Road. He was swerving all over the road, weaving, driving at a high rate of speed, engaged in very, very dangerous and extremely reckless driving. Deputy Michael Magli was northbound on East Lake Road, and because of the extremely dangerous driving and the reckless operation at high speeds, it was a situation where the person needed to be stopped, otherwise he was going to hurt someone else. So Deputy Magli parked his car northbound in the median, got out, and removed the stop sticks from the back of his cruiser. Now, stop sticks are just tire deflation devices. So if you have a car that is, like this one was, going reckless, high speeds, needed to be stopped, at that point, the safest way to do it is to try and deflate the tires so that the vehicle would come to a rest and not endanger anyone else. As Deputy Magli got off his cruiser, he removed the stop sticks from the rear of the car and then moved to the road so he could deploy the stop sticks. As he was moving to the west on the median, the suspect vehicle spun out, flipped over, and very, very violently slammed into Deputy Magli and his cruiser. The cruiser did about a 180-degree spin out. Deputy Magli was pinned under the car, and he is deceased. The person driving the car, the suspect, is Robert Allen, and I'll spell his last name for you, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. Holzaepfel. He's a white male. Date of birth is 6/3 of 87. And I know this will come as a shock. He's got 16 prior felony convictions. He's got a suspended driver's license. He's on probation until 2022. He's drunk, and he's been arrested.
Being the mother of a law enforcement officer brings pride, but nobody wants to gain that pride at the expense of their child's life.
Just bear with me for a second. From the time I was made aware that I could write a victim impact statement, I've written it over 100 times in my head. Each time unable to finish it, as I can't even fathom the reasons I'm writing it. It's been a complete nightmare. At times I want to yell and scream at you for taking Michael from us, for the life that I and all of us now are forced to live. Other times I'm just wandering around in the fog, thinking this is not real and this is not my life. It can't be. Either way, here we are. My son was my world. From the time he was conceived till the day I take my last breath, I didn't know unconditional love until he was born. He made me a mother, and I couldn't ask for a better son. He was a happy and smart kid, and he quickly became self-sufficient and became my right hand with caring for his brother and sister when they came. He was kind and caring and the light of his grandparents' and family's eyes, and he grew up to be a kind and loving man to his wife, Stephanie. He was never a problem to us. He didn't drink or smoke, and he was never disrespectful and always was willing to help anyone. When he met Stephanie, she was the first girl he loved, and he married her, and together they made a beautiful family. Only a year before his death, they had their dream home built, and they were living their life, their best life. When Michael decided to go into law enforcement, I, of course, was not happy, for the reasons that something just like this might happen. But he assured me. He said, "Mom, I know what you're worried about, and I'm not stupid. I'm careful. Believe me, all I want to do is do my job and get home to my family. I'm going to try. I'm not going to try to be a hero, I promise." But that's just what he was that day. The thing is, he was always my hero, my little prince. He saved me 1,000 times over, because he got me. When I was having a bad day or depressed, he was my light. He was an All-American in school. He played football since he was 7 years old. But he was never the tough guy, never the braggart. He was the guy that everyone liked. But I loved him. His brother and sister loved him. He was their glue, and without him, they have been lost. My life and the lives of his brother and sister, who found it too difficult to be here today. Michael's father, his wife Stephanie, and his 2 beautiful daughters live. Lives are forever altered, and they will never be the same. His girls now have to grow up without their kind and loving father. His wife of just 30 years old has to live without her partner and her husband and her best friend. Nothing is the same and never will be for us again. His life was dedicated to serving and helping people, and he was damn good at it. But his life was tragically cut short. How many people could he have helped and saved, and how many? And how much good could he have accomplished in his lifetime if he could have lived it out of its entirety? This is what haunts me every night when I try to go to sleep. This, along with the images that I have, albeit in my mind, of the day that you took my son's life. I may not have been there, but I will forever see my son die in my mind, horribly, and I am forever broken. To no longer see his face breaks me every day. So suddenly was he taken that I didn't get a chance to say goodbye and tell him how much I loved him and that he was my life. The hurt I felt when you took his life cut me like a knife, and it will never be complete again. I will never be free from this grief. It is now a solid thing that lives deep inside of me. I wear a mask of coping, and you may even see a laugh come sometime, but know that I am in complete despair. I can't mend what's broken. Not my heart or my family's. My heart is beyond repair, and I will smile when I have to, and I'll say I'm okay when people ask, but I can't be happy anymore. I no longer feel joy because I will never be whole again because my son is gone. You see, I didn't just lose him once. I lose him over and over again, sometimes many times a day.
Mr. Houseford, let me say this, that you're going to have quite a while to think about things. 35 years. Make sure you think about your actions. Make sure you think about the impact that your actions have had on others, people who are here this afternoon, and many others as well. I'm going to find you guilty. I'll adjudicate you guilty. I'll send you to a total of 35 years in the Department of Corrections. These are all statutory maximums, which will be consecutive, 15 years on count 1, and you'll get credit for the time you've already served, which is 562 days, followed by 15 years on count 2, which is consecutive, followed by 5 years on count 3, which is consecutive. So it's 15 plus 15 plus 5 for a total of 35. By agreement, you're only getting credit for 562 days, which is the time you have in, but only on count 1. Is that correct, Ms. Russell?
Yes, Your Honor.
As I said before, court costs are $2,558, $100 for costs of prosecution. $100 for the services of the public defender's office, the $50 public defender application fee, $100 for the county lab fee, investigative costs are $500 to the sheriff's office. There's a $50,000 lien to the Crimes Compensation Trust Fund. And sir, you already indicated you have no objection to any of the fees or costs. Is that correct? No what?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, very good. As I said, on count 2, there's a permanent driver's license revocation, and we will D6 the multiple offender DUI school and the substance abuse evaluation and treatment and the 2-year ignition lock. On count 2, there is a 4-year minimum mandatory. I don't think that's going to affect the sentence, but it's a 4-year minimum mandatory there. So for a total of 35 years, as I said, 15 plus 15 plus 5. Anything else from the state?
Yes, Your Honor. Pursuant to the plea made by the defense and the family's wish to accept it, the state at this point is not seeking to invoke statute stated within 782.065.
And that's on count 1.
Yes.
Anything from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, any questions at all, Mr. Hossifel? Okay. I would advise you that you have 30 days to appeal the legality of the sentence. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you for that reason. And I do wish you good luck.
I'll stay up here to sign the judgment.
Karen's tears didn't convince the judge, and she received her sentence in a silent courtroom. Even though she had hoped for a lighter punishment, the reality of her actions weighed heavily on her as she was escorted away.
I appreciate that, but at what point? If you look at this report, I have 21 violations of basically of the program itself in terms of when she was supposed to blow. Then, even after that, that was on April 5th. By the time we get the report, she reports back to court. I have on April 6th. She didn't test during the time frame. Later that day, on the 2 to 5 test, she didn't test as scheduled. That was on the 14th. That's just this month. And then she appears before me on the 17th. I give her a break by not remanding her, tell her that she has to get a tether. And now I get here, she's too busy and it's inconvenient.
While you were operating that motor vehicle, ma'am, had you had something to drink?
Yes.
Did that alcohol affect your ability to drive that car?
Yes.
Were you swerving? How so?
I'm sure I was swerving. Typical reactions to alcohol.
Ms. Hook, I just have to get a factual basis. If the police report indicated you were swerving through lanes, would you dispute that or would you agree with it?
Unfortunately, this did happen quite a while ago and I was impaired, so my memory obviously is not going to be 1,000%.
But does that sound accurate to you?
Yeah. If I was intoxicated, I was most likely swerving, and then I stayed stopped at a light and didn't move.
Mr. Gazicki, are you satisfied with that factual basis?
Yes, Your Honor, and the additional fact that blood alcohol was 0.168.
And you're stipulating to that?
We're stipulating today, Your Honor.
So I'll accept the plea as knowing and voluntarily given. Ms. Hook, you've been gone for a decade.
I've been in trouble before. I thought he had given me the stipulations on what I was supposed to do. It was a big mistake on my part. I thought I did what I was supposed to do.
Okay,
I did.
Ms. Hook.
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you picked up any new cases?
No.
Is that your only criminal case that you've had?
There was, within a 1-month time span, I had this charge and another one. I was dealing with a bad situation with my roommate.
I'm just asking, did you go to court on that case?
Yes, yep, that was done, complete.
All right, ma'am, I see nothing on your criminal history whatsoever, which leads me to believe that you do not need probation because it's been a decade and you've not continued any criminal acts. I'm going to do an immediate sentence on this. You have a fine of $400, court costs of $200. So we'll apply the bond.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, you're all set, ma'am.
So all I have to do is pay the rest of that fine? I don't have to do anything else?
Do you want me to give you more?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
In June 2015, the lifeless body of a baby washed ashore in Boston Harbor, casting a shadow of sorrow and outrage over the city. It was revealed that the child was killed by her mother's boyfriend, Michael McCarthy. The child's father, who had trusted the mother to keep their daughter safe, now faces a profound betrayal.
Good morning. My name is Joseph Amoroso, and I am the father of Bella Bond. Bella is the name I chose because it means beautiful, and that she was. It was August 6, 2012 at approximately 9 p.m. when my wife, Courtney, and I listened to Rochelle give birth to Bella over speakerphone. I will never forget the first sound Bella made while entering this world. She wailed, and right away I knew she belonged to me with a set of lungs like hers. Bella was a happy and innocent child full of light. She was very smart and learning things rather quickly. She loved Hello Kitty, and she also knew how to make a pizza. Bella was a gift from God whose life was cut short at such a young age. But Bella was, still is, and always will be in my heart and soul. I believe that my daughter Bella would have excelled in college and grown up to be a very beautiful and successful woman that loved life. I can imagine her being a very loving, well-mannered, and put-together mother that loved children. I was robbed of my chance to be a father to Bella. No verdict changes that, and no justice on earth fixes that grief. The impact of this senseless act of violence has taken quite a toll, not only for me, but also my family. My father is in Florida, but asked that I share the following statement with the court. Our family is grateful that the jury's verdict has brought justice for Bella. We are comforted in knowing that Bella is safe in God's hands. May God bring us all peace in this season of sorrow. Thank you.
In light of some of those comments, I do want to say a few things about the trial the defendant received. It was a very fair trial. The prosecution presented the evidence in a very fair and professional manner. Defense counsel provided Mr. McCarthy with exceptional representation. And although I don't believe I made any legal errors, there is an appellate court which will review the record in this case and make sure that I didn't. The jury was chosen after a week of individual questioning by counsel and myself. They paid close attention to the evidence through almost 3 weeks of testimony, and then they carefully sifted through that evidence over 5 days of deliberations. They were allowed to consider not only first-degree murder, second-degree murder, but also the lesser-included offense of involuntary manslaughter, which I did submit to them over the defense attorney's objection. The jury has now spoken. The defendant has been found guilty of murder in the second degree. Mr. Shapiro says this is not at the aggravated end of the spectrum, and he talks about the third prong of malice. But just so we're clear here, although it was the verdict meant that the jury was not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that this murder was the result of any deliberate plan on the defendant's part, it was convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. McCarthy intended to cause grievous bodily harm to a 2-year-old child or intended to do an act which a reasonable person would have known would result in that child's death. And the penalty for second-degree murder is mandatory, life in prison, reflecting the seriousness of that crime. Now, as both counsel point out, I do have some discretion as to the parole eligibility, and the considerations as to that are not identical, in my view, to the considerations I use in terms of fashioning sentence. But I think there are some things that I still need to consider that I would consider both in imposing a sentence of term of years and in terms of the parole eligibility, now that the legislature has decided to give the court discretion to extend that beyond the 15 years. It's certainly hard to predict what Mr. McCarthy, what kind of person he'll be more than a decade from now. But in light of the vulnerability of the victim, the circumstances that surrounded the cover-up of her death, I determined that he should not be parole eligible for at least 20 years. So with that, I'll have the clerk impose the sentence.
McCarthy, please stand up. The jury, having returned a verdict of guilty against you, murder in the second degree, the court, in consideration of your offense, now sentences you to the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction for enduring your natural life with parole eligibility after 20 years. The court deems you have served 650 days spent in custody awaiting disposition of this matter. That goes back to the date of arrest of 9/18/2015. The court imposed a $90 victim witness fee. You're notified of your duty to supply a DNA sample to the DNA laboratory, and you're notified of your right to appeal this conviction pursuant to rules of appellate procedure. You stand committed, sir.
Thank you.
Karen, thinking her tears could save her, pleaded before the judge, but her insincere display failed, and she was swiftly punished.
Also blowing numbers. And then I told you on the 1st, we're now just halfway through May. From the time that I told you that I didn't want to see any other missed tests. And before that, it wasn't like we had any positives, but we didn't know. Then, as indicated on the 8th, an interesting thing kind of happens, because on the 8th, low numbers again. The person testing couldn't be identified. It was very clear that someone other than you tested on the silver line.
No, don't admit that. And I have gone through issues, but she said I am committed and I want to put on the scrim tether. I have support and I'm changing my life around. No longer any type of alcohol. I have a position that I've been waiting for. I was depressed because I didn't have employment. I had no money coming in, and that's the most important thing. And that's given me a lot of hope to get on the right path for my children. And I promise you, I would not test positive for anything. I have a therapist and I have my mom that I talk to and help me go and do it again. I promise.
Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.